I would astral project as a child every night. I would get out of my body, walk out through the garage door for some reason instead of out the front door, and I would just run up my driveway and start flying all over the neighborhood. And then I would end up also going into other realms and dimensions with spirit guides. So they would take me higher to places that were not just in the lower realms of the astral plane. And that's how I got to see visions of the future as well when I got older.
Today, we're talking with near-death experiencer Anna Elmore. Welcome in, Anna. I'm so happy to be talking with you.
Thank you. I'm so blessed to be sharing with you as well. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Before we hopped on, I asked her, how do you have the courage to do this one particular thing that you're going to learn about in a few minutes? And I got a great explanation, which we'll wrap up with today. Anna, why don't you kind of take us back to before you had your first near-death experience? What was going on in your life? And then kind of let us know what has transpired since then.
Sure. So, about 25 years ago, when I was still a student at the University of Texas studying anthropology, I got into my first of three vehicle accidents in the past, 25 years. So that one was a four-car collision, and I was actually traffic was stopped. I was going down I-35, which is the main highway in Austin, and I was hit from behind by a SUV going full speed. They didn't have enough time to slow down. But what's interesting, what happened, and this happened in all three of my near-death experiences, of which I was not the driver in all of them, but time stopped and I was able to have a 360-degree view of everything before it happened. It's like I came out of my body, or my consciousness was in two places at once, and I was able to see everything around me from an expanded view. And I knew they were not going to have enough time to stop. And so, in the blink of an eye, I was in the lane next to me, facing 180 degrees in the other direction, and I had an 18-wheeler coming towards me, right, in front of my face. Time stopped again, and luckily the 18-wheeler was also able to stop. However, my face hit the steering wheel, even though I had on my seatbelt. And because back then, I think that airbags hadn't come out until like a year later, or they weren't standard. So, yeah, my face hit the steering wheel. I ended up breaking my nose, busting my lip. It wasn't too pretty, but I didn't have any pain at all. And I thought it was just because of shock, but it wasn't because of that, because even in the days and weeks after that, I didn't have any pain. It was miraculous. And the paramedics, they just ended up like hopping over the concrete median to get to me. They were already there due to an accident that had occurred going northbound. I was going southbound. And so,
Wow, that was
yeah,
awfully lucky.
they were already there, yeah. And so it was just back then I was not aware of how miraculous and how synchronous everything was. I thought that, oh, this must be what happens when you have an accident, you know?
Are
And
you talking about being able to see 360 and all that? You weren't able to really integrate it as a spiritual expansion.
that's correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I just thought that that's what happens to everyone. And I think it actually happens more and more often if people remember and go back to the moment. and see and are able to process it, get out of the trauma of it, and go back and process it. And so years later, my second car accident, I was living in Dubai in the Middle East. My husband and I, at the time, we had kids. They were 5 and 8, and he and I were celebrating that he had just gotten a new a new job, and we were really happy about it. And so we were driving through one of the main highways in Dubai, but one thing that we didn't know was that even though we're in the desert there, it gets really foggy at night. It can get foggy at night because you're right on the Persian Gulf. So there's a lot of humidity coming in at night, even though it's the desert. And so a lot of the highways there were built by British, and they use the roundabout system. Instead of intersections that go over and under, they just have roundabouts. And so they don't really have speed limits there. So people go really fast all the time. And we were going pretty fast. And we ended up hitting the roundabout. And we ended up, I don't know how this happened. It was nighttime. And when we realized that, uh-oh, this is bad, the car itself ended up going through this pillars that were there that were holding up the sign. They didn't actually, like, teleported to the other side. When I got out of the car, I looked back, the tracks were straight through it. But the car itself, it hit the sand. Again, time stopped. And I remember thinking this prayer. I didn't actually say it. It was in the instant of a moment. Please, no, not now, the children. And so I knew.
So are you saying that the tracks went straight into the pillar, but you
Straight.
guys ended up on the far side
Yes.
with no impact?
No impact other than the car got buried halfway into the sand, and the
Wow.
airbags went off. And again, the only injury I had on that one was a bruise from the seatbelt. And I mean, the time stopped in the sense that I could see the airbag coming. I could see all the particles of the gunpowder in the air, all the dust. I could see that. And it was in that instant when my face hit the airbag and I came up again, it became the sun rose.
So you were driving home at night.
That's right.
Do not impact the pillar. You landed on the far side of the pillar
That's correct.
and you lost hours.
I don't know if it was hours. I don't know what time it was. I just know it was
Wow.
nighttime when we were driving, and when
Hmm.
we impact the sand and I came up, it was morning. The sun was rising.
Did you and your husband look at each other like, what just happened here?
We're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? Basically, that's the first thing we said. Are you okay? Yes. And then we were just a little bit dazed. We never lost consciousness through the entire time. I saw the airbag deflating. And then I ended up climbing out of the car because it was halfway buried in the sand. And this gentleman came. So this is the first of two angelic encounters, like, manifest. I know that I was protected by angels the entire time, and we always are. But this one actually came in human form. And he was wearing all white, which is actually traditional in that culture for Arab men to wear all white. And he came and he brought us two ice cold bottles of water to drink. And it was
Out
just,
of nowhere.
well, I didn't see him. I just saw him get out of this white SUV and then came right at sunrise and gave us these two ice cold bottles of water in the middle of the desert. What are the odds of that happening? When I look back at that, I'm like, that was divine intervention.
That was an angel. That
Yeah.
was an angel. And
And then,
they come in the most gracious way, give you what you need, and then they just sort of mist away.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. He never gave us his name. He just, wanted to make us feel like we were all right. And that water was the most refreshing water I've ever had. It took away any stress, any anxiety, and it also kind of just made me more present. It made me more present. And so just like being in the body again with that cold water. So, yeah, the vehicle was destroyed both times. All three times the vehicle was destroyed. So the third time was just 3 years ago, and this was back in Austin. And so I was driving northbound again on I-35, and my wheels on the right side, they ended up blowing out. So I either ran over something or they just blew out. And I was going just like 5 miles over the speed limit, but it's still pretty fast, 70 miles an hour to have a blowout. And I ended up getting out of control and hitting the side, the median, the concrete median at full speed. Yeah. And again, time stopped like right before I was going to hit. I said a prayer. I said, please, no pain. Let me be of service. It was just a thought. And then I hit, and that time the car spun. There were other cars, 18 wheelers and other cars going by me. Somehow they all managed to pass me without actually crashing into me. And I was taking up multiple lanes of the highway as I was swerving and getting out of control. And then my car ended up stopping perpendicular to traffic. And then it started smoking. And so I got out of it as soon as I could. I was a little bit dazed. And so this is where the second angel came incarnate, and he stopped behind me also in a white truck, and he was wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, and he was very humble, and he was deaf and mute. And we exchanged phone numbers so that we could communicate. And his name was Silent Bear, which is a Native American name. And we continued to communicate afterwards for a few weeks and days, and then that's it. But all of these accidents, I was able to be in that space, in that eternal now moment when the time stood still. Not only was I able to see what was happening around me in 360 degrees, but I also got glimpses of the future. And I've also had several out-of-body experiences, more that were even more spiritually transformative. Go
Now,
ahead.
were the out of body experiences in between the accidents, or when did those happen? Because those can be profound.
Sure. Yeah. So I've actually had them all my life,
Okay.
all my life since I was a child. So I would astral project as a child every night. I would get out of my body, walk out through the garage door for some reason instead of out the front door. And I would just run up my driveway and start flying all over the neighborhood. And then I would end up also going into other realms and dimensions with spirit guides. So they would take me higher to places that were not just in the lower realms of the astral plane. And that's how I got to see visions of the future as well when I got older. I stopped astral projecting, lucid dreaming, maybe for about 20 years when I was married, when I was a full-time mom, and I had other priorities. But then just back in 2013, it all started again.
Now,
And
why do you think it started? Was it something that you thought, I want to get back to that, or I feel called to do it, or did it happen spontaneously?
it happened spontaneously. And what happened was this was actually 3 years before my divorce. And I think that it was a literal awakening, but it happened while I was asleep. It was the most realistic, most life-changing experience that I have had, including those near-death experiences.
Okay, tell us more.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm always so fascinated because I hear this often that the other reality outside of this reality is so much more real than this. And that always, of course, someone who hasn't experienced it, it's hard to imagine. Can you describe why that felt so much more real than this?
Sure. So that I was less inhibited. Like in this physical body, I can't fly. In this physical body, I can't breathe underwater. In this or in space, right? In this physical body, I'm limited to my five senses. When I'm in my astral body, which I believe is the spirit body that I think heaven is the higher level of the astral plane, what we call heaven, when we still have a form that looks like a perfected version of this body, of the physical body. That is the original, that is our true existence. This physical plane that we live in now is just a shadow of that. It is less vibrant. It is more constricted, more limited. It literally has, weight and gravity in more ways than just physics. But when I was taken by my guide, who ended up being a Native American woman who I never recognized, like I don't have any conscious memory of. But when she arrived, my heart recognized her as if she were my sister. And I just felt this love and warmth from her, and it was emanating from me as well. And so she ended up taking me by the arm and we flew. And she took me to this plane where it looked a lot like Yellowstone National Park. But in like its perfected form. Like there were these beautiful pine trees and this white marble mountains and this river, which was so clear and crisp. I could taste it just by looking at it. And it was so refreshing. And so we ended up like flying around there and landing in this clearing. And in the clearing, there was thousands, thousands of other light beings there. And they were all sitting around this like conference table. And the table went out as far as I could see. I couldn't see the end of it. And so all of these light beings, I could just, when you're in that realm, you just know things. You know
Mm-hmm.
everything about everyone just by being in their presence. You know that this soul is thousands of years old. You just know it, and then there's something in you that responds to authority, to just you know that you've known these people for eternity. And they're all here now. You may have been there. This may have been your soul that I was looking at there as well. There were just, I think it was just all these light workers that are here in the United States were there meeting in the astral plane at that moment. And so what I was shown was as we arrived, the table itself, it was like this technology that it was like holographic, and it was kind of like a giant iPad. And but the images were raised, and so everybody was looking at something in front of them, and I was able to see over the shoulders of the three that were nearest to me. And the first scene that I saw was wildfires. And I knew just by looking at it that it was in our current and future trajectory. And this was before all the wildfires that happened on the planet I knew, like somehow I just knew that they were going to be all around the planet, and it wasn't necessarily going to be at the same time, but that this is what we're dealing with now in that eternal now moment. It's like time is totally different there. It's like I just knew, this is what's happening. And so I knew the Amazon was going to catch fire. I knew Australia was going to catch fire. I knew the tundra in Russia was going to catch fire, and other places as well, the United States, where we have fires commonly on the West Coast. I knew that was going to be an issue, Canada as well. And this happened years before those fires actually started happening. Once they started happening, I was like, uh-oh,
Yeah.
it's starting. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you, and I think that's such an interesting experience in that it's hard for people who haven't had it to understand that you get all the information in a 360 way immediately and just a complete knowing in the moment. And where on earth it would take us reading or time or listening to gather all that information and then internalize it.
Yeah, so our brain is like a receiver when it only has a certain capacity or bandwidth. And
Or it's a reducer.
yes, that's right.
It almost reduces the amount of information that we're able to perceive.
That's correct. Yeah, it does. And so when you're out of the physical body, you have more capacity to receive and understand information.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we are much less limited when we are not in the physical body, but the physical body obviously serves a purpose. And that is why we're here now, is to achieve self-mastery through perceived limitation, right?
Okay. Okay.
That is why we're here now. And so let me go back to the second thing that I was shown that was in our future, and that was the strife of humanity. And it started with Gaza. I mean, I said I thought it was Israel at the time, but I knew it was in the Middle East. I knew that it had to do with Israel. I knew that it was going to be buildings that were destroyed. I saw it. I saw all of the concrete dust. I saw children being pulled out of it. And so it was just a knowing that, okay, this is what we have. This is what you signed up for. And I was disappointed. I wasn't like shocked or anything other than like, okay, this is get ready.
So you were kind of steeling yourself for what you knew was
Well,
coming.
that's right. That's right. And you feel more compassion there. You have more capacity for more compassion, but it's not as devastating as you might think, you know. And then the last one that I saw, it was fading in and out of like beautiful, like Eden-like utopia, just peace, and then also like total devastation, destruction, just dystopia like Mad Max. That was the last thing I saw. It was like not set in stone. It was fading in and out. Or now looking back at that, I think it could be both at the same time.
That's that's interesting. I haven't heard that.
Mhm.
So is what you're saying that if we have both at the same time, then some are going to be going down one timeline, some are going to be going down another timeline, and both those experiences will be played out for the human experience of it. Is that how it looked to
That
you?
is that could quite possibly be what happens. And looking at Dolores Cannon's teachings, which I did after that, like 3 years later is when I got into Dolores Cannon. And the separation of the old and the new earth, that could literally be what I was shown after the fact, after the separation. And what I felt was that we will not be people on in either reality will not be aware of each other.
And will it be on the same planet? We're just a slightly different frequency, so we're not interacting with each other?
That's correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Isn't that amazing to think about?
Yeah. I
And
don't
did,
know how that's going to work, but I do know that there's going to be some chaos for everyone in between, because it's just like when you're changing a radio station, when you're changing frequencies, it's always most chaotic in between when you're making that shift. And so once the shift happens, then people will be experiencing whatever their vibratory match to. And so, what determines your experience is your capacity for compassion, for love, for self-love, and also your ability focus, to focus on that which you wish to create, not that which you wish to destroy. And so, whatever you focus on, the focus is our greatest strength and also weakness.
so when you were seeing that, Anna, and it's a profound vision, or is it a profound experience, particularly that you remember it so clearly?
Mhm.
What was your emotional reaction when you saw those two different timelines? That must have been, from our human perspective, I would think it would be like, oh my gosh, it's just a strong emotional reaction. Because you were in a different form, your energy body in a different vibratory state, was it kind of a little less shocking?
Yeah, it wasn't shocking. It was just basically like, oh, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And so this all happened in a very short period of time. Once I got there, once we landed, it's like I just instantly absorbed all of that information with a glance.
Yeah.
As we landed, maybe like a breath later, I had this, I don't know if he was an angel or an ascended master, come down and land right before me. It was like he was materializing as he was landing. He came down from a higher realm, and he was dressed all in white. He was the most handsome man I have ever seen in my life. He was who I now have identified as one of the seven or nine, people say different names, different numbers of the holy Kumars in Hindu tradition. And they were some of the original individuations of Source, of God, before humanity was created. And some people may liken him to an archangel. And I knew as soon as he arrived, there was something in me that did not remember him in my mind, but in every other essence of me, I recognized him
Yeah.
as someone with authority, as someone who was at least thousands, if not millions of years old. I just by being in his presence, I could tell all of that. And he arrived there to basically, everyone there, and you were probably there, like all light workers, everyone is who's coming to me, I'm sure was there. I'm
So are you saying that everyone at that table is currently incarnated on Earth? And this was a meeting that everybody, was called to, so that there's kind of a little powwow or a little exchange of ideas in order to maybe shift realities here on the planet.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, this is fascinating to
Yeah.
me.
Sure.
So when you were there, Was there discussions among the people at the table? Can you talk about that a little?
So that's when we all came up with a plan. And the plan was for this mass evolutionary leap in consciousness that we are about to experience now. And what that looks like is the aurora borealis. That's what I was shown. We all decided this is the solution, and it's going to be an option that's open to everyone who's willing to receive. And what it looked like was the aurora borealis all over the entire planet. And I knew that this was going to be what triggered this mass awakening. And it's already happening now, but this is something that it's going to change everyone. And it's going to look like just people becoming more conscious, more aware, more wise, more kind, more compassionate, perhaps more telepathic, like all of our clairvoyance and claircognizance and all of our clairs will be activated. And what triggers it is the solar activity, in combination with the Earth's electromagnetic field, the pole shift is happening at the same time. And so the Earth's electromagnetic field is weakening a little bit because of that polar shift.
And we're moving out of the Kali Yuga,
That's
and
right.
we're in a different position to start receiving more energy from the central sun.
That's correct. Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's the sun is like a portal. And so it's bringing in energy from the great central sun, from the entire cosmos. We are moving into this plane where, and this is cyclical. This is something that has happened actually multiple times during human history. And this has gone by different names in different cultures. So this is where my anthropology comes in. So,
Perfect.
right.
Right.
And
Mhm.
so in Mesoamerica, it was known as Quetzalcoatl or the feathered serpent. In Aboriginal tradition, it was known as the rainbow serpent. In European tradition, it's known as the Ouroboros, which is like the serpent that's eating its own tail, which is cyclical. And in Hindu tradition, it is the end of Kali Yuga, the beginning of Sat Yuga or the Golden Age. In New Age tradition, it is the Age of Aquarius. In Christian tradition, it could be the return of Christ,
The second coming.
right? Yeah.
And I have already noticed, I'm sure you have too, because you're so open, is people's perceptions are shifting and they're expanding. For instance, my telepathy is much stronger than it was even a year ago. And I see people all of a sudden having these skills and abilities that are a birthright that we were born with for one reason or another that get shut down very early. Most of us as children flew, and then we got it kind of shamed out of us. And it's exciting to see the potential that is humanity with all the gifts that we have starting to come back online. I imagine you must be seeing a lot more as well.
Sure, yeah. So the children that are coming in are just they know they're smarter and wiser than I am in many ways. Like certain things that I have to try to explain and convince people of my generation, they are just like, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Just
hello.
yeah. And it's just these innate abilities that we have always had, but that have kind of been suppressed just because we felt that that was what we needed to do to survive. That's no longer the case.
No, and we're coming into a time where someone's going to walk into a kitchen and there's Aunt Betty, except Aunt Betty died 20 years ago.
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
going to start seeing and perceiving a whole lot more. Now, you had this experience, this out of body experience. I hope I was there. I hope we sat next
Yeah.
to each other at the table.
Yes.
That would be really fun. You had this experience. you come back, you wake up. How do you integrate that? Because that's a huge paradigm shift for you. An undermining of what we perceive as our cultural reality. How do you work with that?
So I told everyone I could about it. Unfortunately, my husband was not receptive to that. I changed. I became totally, I started loving myself. I had this craving for knowledge, whereas before I had no spiritual practice. That's when I became a beyond quantum healing hypnosis practitioner. I just had this hunger for spiritual knowledge. And I had no doubt once that happened, I had absolutely no doubt that we never cease to exist, that there's much more than the physical plane, that I had to basically take my responsibility and do what I came here to do, that I wasn't here just to be a stay-at-home mom, a wife. And that's when my life changed. 3 years later, my marriage ended because my
Yeah.
husband wasn't willing to accept the new me. He did not want to change. He wanted me to stay like I was when we met at 18 years of age. That's not going to happen. And so I ended up becoming a registered nurse. And then I ended up graduating from nursing right when the pandemic hit. But I was working in the ICU and I was living these two different lives. I was working in the ICU during the pandemic, and then I was also teaching breath work to hundreds of people without vaccinations, without masks. This was in the beginning, there was no vaccine. And so I had these two conflicting realities.
Exactly. So one kind of steeped in fear, one steeped in the reality of actually who we are.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
And
How did you manage that?
I just was observing it, and I was just like, I realized how whatever we believe is our reality. Whatever you believe
Yeah.
becomes your reality. And it was just 100% proof. My very last patient that I had ended up, she was triple vaccinated, and she still ended up passing away due to the pandemic. And so after that, I was like, you know what? I quit. I'm not going to do this. I ended up getting vaccinated twice, and it didn't affect me either way. I never got it. I never got sick. And my fellow nurses were like, I can't believe you haven't gotten sick. Well, I do breath work. And they were like, okay, but they didn't understand. I tried to communicate, but it was just, there was no receptivity at all.
There's no foundation to accept that. And if they're not asking questions,
Mhm.
where do you
Right.
go? Where do you go from there? If they're
Yeah.
not interested.
Yeah.
Mhm. So
So
you left nursing, and that
that's
probably opened up a whole new world for you.
that's right. Yeah. So I went into hypnotherapy, and I'm a wellness coach. And I also was doing work with veterans with PTSD, and I helped with psychedelic retreats.
Mhm.
And that also opened up a whole new world as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, so just it was beautiful, and I see what's coming. I'm able to, in the meditative state, leave the my consciousness and go into that eternal now space, and be receptive to information on a daily basis. Like, how can I best be of a joyful service? Show me. And it just keeps happening, and it's out of my control. I just go with the flow. And that's what I recommend to everyone, to get through what is coming. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. And there's going to be a lot of letting go a lot of changes, a lot of things that we think are serving us now, but they no longer will. We're going to have to let them go. And it's going to be okay. And it's
Yeah.
actually going to be better than you can possibly imagine. We just need to keep focusing on what we want to create, not what we want to hold on to, not what we want to destroy. And we need to always be coming from this vibration of love, of unconditional love. And the best way to do that is to have a daily spiritual practice. And that can be anything, whatever makes you feel closer to source, closer to unconditional love, closer to omnipotent power and grace. And that is what you are. That is what you came from. That is where you're going. And the ride, the journey, it all depends on your choices, on your receptivity, on your compassion.
Yeah, that was so beautifully put, Anna. Thank you. The reason I am so incredibly excited about the future, and of course, we're going to go through a bumpy time in between, and we'll touch on that in just a minute. But the reason I'm so excited is humans are creators. We are remarkably, unbelievably, shockingly, stunningly creative. And that creativity and that ability that humanity has to create has been suppressed and it's been squashed and it's been kind of kept in a tiny, tiny, tiny little box. When that box opens and we can come out and start focusing our energy not on fighting or competing or struggling, but on creating the world that we want to live in, it's going to be extraordinary. And the new developments are just going to be coming so quickly because all of a sudden the guy that was working in the back office at some insurance company with an incredible brain for this creative outlet is going to be freed to follow that passion. And it's going to be thousands upon millions of those people that all of a sudden that that essence of who they are gets unleashed, and when then we get to just roll around in all that creativity.
Exactly, exactly. And it's important also to not be in like a state of victimization. Like we all agreed to be here now. We all agreed to
Yes.
see this Kali Yuga, this age of like darkness and just volatility and lack of awareness, to see that end, to see that shift into freedom. This is freedom. We are waking up, and we are becoming more sensitive in a good way, and we're getting all of our power back. We're not going to be giving it away to anybody anymore. We're not going to be in fear anymore because we're remembering who we are. We're remembering who we are, and we are going to create. I saw something that looks very similar to heaven on earth. And
Ah,
yeah,
isn't
and
that so exciting?
yeah, and it's going to be in our lifetime. I was there. This
Well,
is
maybe your lifetime. I'm a little older than you.
no,
I'm
no,
hoping I'm so hoping I stick around at least to see a little bit
yes,
of
yes.
the potential unfold.
Yeah, well, you're helping create it by the work that you do. You're helping create it right now. And we can actually experience this for ourselves right now. We don't have to wait. We don't have to wait to see it outside of ourselves. Every time we experience peace and love and grace and hope and understanding within us, that amplifies like the entire collective.
Yes,
It allows,
that vibration just expands out.
yeah, that's right. And so we can have that for ourselves right now. We don't have to wait. And the way that we do that is by having a daily spiritual practice, by doing things that raise your vibration, whether it's time in nature, whether it's, prayer, meditation, whatever that is, do that at least once a day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. be aware of your thoughts. Be aware of what you consume. And I'm not just talking about food and drink. I'm also talking about, what you watch, what you listen to. I don't watch the news myself, but, if you do, just do it in moderation and realize that you are attracting whatever it is that you focus on. You're magnetizing that. Focus is literally magnetizing whatever you focus on into your reality. So be very careful with what you focus on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anna, you are such a gift. And you explain it so beautifully in a very relatable way. It doesn't sound unattainable. It sounds easy and a sweet flow of energy.
Yeah, thank you. It is easy once you get the hang of it. No matter what's happening around you, you can be that peace, that eye
Mhm.
in the storm.
Yeah, and we need that right now. We need
Yes.
as many people as possible, the volunteers, as Dolores Cannon would say,
Yeah.
to walk in that peace and walk in that potential. And it's exciting to me to be able to look forward to all the expansion of humanity and the shift of humanity. This is such an incredible planet. We have so much potential, and having it open in front of us is the greatest show in the galaxy, I think.
Yeah. So, like, what do you want to see? What do you want to create? I saw this civilization of people, like we are all connected. We all realize our connection to the planet and to each other. We all know that anything that I do to you is going to affect me too. Anything that, and so I saw we get to, and it's already happening now, we get to a place where we can heal ourselves. Any disease, any mental disorder, any trauma is going to be healed. Love heals everything.
Yes.
And this
Yeah.
wave of love is what's coming in. And we're also going to be interacting with not just each other and the planet in a more intense and intimate way. We are also going to experience our loved ones because they're really just, you know,
They're
a
just a shift away.
that's right. And so
Yeah.
there's not going to be any separation there anymore. And then this also has to do with our galactic family, our cosmic star family. Even now, we can interact with them. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Stephen Greer and his CE5 events.
Mhm.
I've been to dozens of them, and
Have you?
every single time we see something, we experience something undoubtable, and they interact. And
Mhm.
it happens every time when you get into that meditative state, into that loving, fearless, open state, that there's a connection there. And they're gonna come. They're our family. They're coming. They're coming to interact with us. That is what we're moving towards. We're gonna become an intergalactic civilization. We already are, but it's just not open,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Anna, tell us about the work that you're doing now and how the viewers can find out more about you.
Sure. So, I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I practice beyond quantum healing hypnosis, which is the next level of the Dolores Cannon method. And I also am a wellness coach and a spiritual counselor. And you can find me at ascendwithanna.com. And you can also email me anytime, and elmore.anna@gmail.com.
Wonderful. And I'll have all that information linked in the description box down below. Super easy for you to find Anna and connect with her. Thank you so much for your time today. This has been fascinating for me. I hope that you'll come back maybe a few months down the road and we can take a look at what the world is around us and have a conversation a little further into what the transition is here on Earth.
That would be my pleasure. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.